Vic, we're really excited about hosting you in Luxembourg for this wonderful summit to come in November. Very excited this side of the continent. How are you feeling about it? Have you been to Luxembourg before?
I haven't been to Luxembourg. Very excited. I think there's a dynamite lineup and illustrious sort of agenda. And yeah, very excited to share whatever my experience with the rest of the folks.
Well, you're part of that illustrious agenda. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role as partner at DreamersVC?
Sure. So Dreamers is a $100 million early stage generalist fund based here in LA. The most notable aspect is that it's co-founded by Will Smith, the actor, and Keisuke Honda, who's a prominent Japanese soccer player. Sort of despite the star power, we're actually not a traditional celebrity fund or in Austria, the family office. We're actually structured like a traditional venture fund and capitalized with all Japanese limited partners. So Nomura, the big investment bank, is our anchor LP, and we have a pretty diverse composition of the rest of our limited partners: Shiseido, Mitsubishi, ASICS, Dentsu. So it's really allowed us to sort of marry the Japanese corporate capital with tech startups, and in the middle sits sort of this scion of entertainment, Will Smith, and the Hollywood and entertainment aspect.
You've definitely got the pizzazz power. We're hoping you're going to bring some of that to us here in Luxembourg. Now, you've discussed macro trends in millennials related to your recent investment in HipCamp. So when you're thinking about trends, how do you monitor them, and then how do you think about investing in them?
Yeah, so as we think about trends, we certainly follow all of the white papers and sort of the market research reports that we're getting. And we especially like to sort of think, we'd like to think at a high level of where are a lot of these things going? For instance, right now there's this huge sort of push for parents against, let's just say, for example, against kids' screen time. And so what we started seeing is now there are tons of these, entertainment streaming platforms coming out that are saying, how do we decrease screen time while, making up for the fact that we need to sort of offer, educational opportunities or tools while making sure that they also get that quality time with their parents. And so that was just sort of drilling down to one example. But ultimately, we take where we think the world is going, and we try and sort of match that with a 5 to 7 year time frame from start to sort of growth capital, and then get into an exit within that time frame.
And what's the answer to that, by the way, just as a parent? What's your conclusion to that?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple investments in stealth. One, which I actually may be able to talk about in November. But the answer is, everyone is it's very similar to HipCamp. Is you have to go online to get offline. And so, with HipCamp is actually the perfect example because, in order to really, be out, get outdoors, be active, you need to sort of find that land, and we can unlock all sorts of private land to go camping. And so the same thing with the kids streaming platform. The last thing we want to do is sort of be like a parent where, the kids sort of, you go out to dinner with your family and you just put the headphones on and you just allow them. It's like, no, there are actually some interactive ways to sort of maintain that bond between a parent and child while also making the device or the electronic just sort of a secondary aspect. So that's sort of what we're pushing forward.
So when you think about Europe and the startups you might hope to meet over here, two questions. How much are you thinking about investing? You mentioned some of the funds you have available to you at your fingertips. And what sort of investments, what sort of startups are you looking to invest in?
Sure. So certainly, Europe is becoming a focus for us. We're at the tail end of deploying Fund 1 and are about to go out and raise Fund 2, where we want to take a much more global aspect, since obviously Silicon Valley isn't the only source of innovation, especially in tech. And Europe is certainly coming up, and I think they're actually now. I think we saw one of those recent announcements from Macron of actually really turning Europe into sort of a tech hub. That combined with the fact that I don't know how welcome this will be, but with Margaret Vestager, sort of the EU, leading the backlash, I think one of the good things that's going to come from the techlash, which never gets mentioned, is the amount of innovation that's going to spring up. And so I kind of liken it to what happened to Microsoft in 2000. They had this huge antitrust battle. They didn't get, they were kneecapped, but it was more from perspective of it allowed lots of other startups to start competing with them. And so I think, Europe has certainly seen it. Obviously, there are some interesting things happening with Brexit and, I don't want to say fallout, but I think there'll be a ripple effect going forward. But in terms of what we're looking forward to in Luxembourg, I think it's, it's doing exactly what you all are doing, which is amassing, sort of this brain trust from all over the world to come here and say, hey, this is, a current and future tech hub. And, it's very easy to sort of overlook these things and just focus on Silicon Valley or some of the other big, Berlin, things like that. But I think there's a lot left to be seen that we're certainly looking forward to doing.
Well, we're hoping that a lot of entrepreneurs, founders of startups will watch this video, this interview with you and hear your words of wisdom. How can they approach you? What do you want to see in their business plans? But before you even see a business plan, how can they even get to you, to access you?
Sure. So one, I'm happy to give my email. It's Vik at Dreamers.VC. You can go to our website, and there's even there's one of those typical portals to sort of submit your name and message, and then even drop a pitch deck. We're an early stage investor. We specialize from seed all the way to Series B. I think it's at the seed level, we just have 3 boxes to check: team, product, and market. And oftentimes, if 2 of them are strong enough, we hope to be able to help them with the third. So I wouldn't say we have anything differentiated from what lots of other investors are looking for. But to us, it's just about, it's sort of this like certain je ne sais quoi, in that there are lots of great companies that can check those boxes, but there are some that really stand out. And to us in particular, it's really about the founder and the founding team. And if we really think they can sort of build this, can they handle these inevitable challenges? Lots of startups end up pivoting. They're going to face all sorts of roadblocks. And do we think they have sort of that mental stamina and fortitude to really overcome those? And, a lot of times, don't get me wrong, there's a reason this is the riskiest asset class, but I think it's also the most fulfilling asset class in that, hedge funds, if you make a lot of money in the public markets, okay, great. A lot of times it comes from shorting a stock, but if you really you put your money where your mouth is and you back a founding team with a big vision and a bold idea, and it actually comes to fruition, I think it's satisfying for everybody, and ideally for the end user as well.
When you mentioned the team, product, and market, and for you, really the most important thing then, by the sounds of it, is the team, that strength of a team. So they'll have to prove to you somehow their mental strength to overcome those roadblocks. But what if they've never had the roadblocks to overcome yet?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I kind of liken it to sort of being like a college admissions officer. You have a very limited, you're looking at, let's just say in the grand scheme of things, it's kids in high school, they've shown you all the things they've done, but they haven't shown you what they're capable of. And so you kind of look for these little signals. And so we do a lot of considerable amount of diligence, and, we talk to their past references, their past bosses, their past employees. We look to see, were they good managers? I think one thing people, really like to forget is, or that people forget sometimes, is that as these companies grow, and you've seen this with the Ubers and, and their missteps, I would say, is that they really have to grow into being, incredible leaders and managers. And so when you have, when you're starting off at a seed company, you have 4 to 5 employees, and it's like, okay, you're just trying to, find product market fit. As you sort of grow and grow, you're going to have 100 employees, 500, et cetera. And then you really grow into a much more different sort of executive than you were before. And so to us, it's about, were there sort of, I guess I would say this, we're looking for, it's not that we need extraordinary people like they were Olympians or, professional, stars in their own right, but we're looking for ordinary people that have done extraordinary things in their past.
And you might be one of them reading your CV. So how did you become a venture capitalist?
Yeah, sure. So I definitely have a more non-traditional path than a lot of my contemporaries. Prior to business school, I'd worked abroad for about 5 years in East Africa, spent a couple of years in Haiti, working for the Clinton Foundation, sort of doing international development and consulting. Business school, I kind of went to business school to sort of expand the amount of impact I could have. Obviously, I was working directly with the end user and beneficiaries, but I saw that the amount of capital the amount of impact that venture capital provides to the end user can actually be, it can honestly be kind of astonishing. And by that I mean I guess it's a lot of it is about empathizing with the end customer or the consumer and some of these things. And so having worked with the lowest at the bottom of the pyramid and sort of bringing that experience up, it really allowed me, I thought it was one of the most fulfilling jobs to really use capital for impact. And you can sort of see that. And I'll just say, in that if you look at all of the FANG stocks, let's just say, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, all of those were venture backed. And so the amount of venture capital has about a 20x return down the line once these companies go public and make up their fair share on the stock exchanges. And so thinking about, if you really want to have this like force multiplier impact, I would argue there's no better way to do it than early stage financing.
And do you ever feel jealous of some of these founders, startups that you get to meet? Do you ever kind of think, I'd like to flip this, I'd like to be on their side?
Yes, the ultimate answer is yes, because there's no doubt, because at the end, when you get to an exit, you realize they have very significant percentages of these companies, and ultimately it comes down to, obviously they're going to exit with a very nice windfall. That said, is they have gone through unbelievable trials and tribulations to get to that point. No one, no matter how easy it has looked or how good of a face they put on, it's such a roller coaster. And I'm pretty confident I don't even have what it takes. And you can just sort of tell, what these founders have been through. And it reminds me of one of probably our most prominent founder in our portfolio, Elon Musk. Basically says, he was giving this talk to a bunch of college students, I believe, and they were asking, look, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't know if it's meant for me, and I'm making a pros and cons list. I've got all these things to weigh. And he said, if you even have to make a pros and cons list, you're just not meant for it, because it has to be this something driving you in the back of your mind that you have to do this, throw caution to the wind, and just, sort of like, don't just walk off the plank, like run. And I think that's, it's just immensely humbling to be around some of these folks. And I should also say, whether or not they're successful, I mean, it's, they went to the battlefield. And so, I think that's why there's so much lore in Silicon Valley about that.
Well, I hope we find a few more Elon Musks for you in Luxembourg. And of course, we would very much welcome his presence if he ever wants to come and visit one of his Tesla shops here, which does exist in Luxembourg, along with a lot of space work to come here in Luxembourg. So he's a great name drop amongst the others you have on your list. Just finally, really, when I speak to some of the people who will be arriving here in November, you all have MBAs. How important is that to your job?
Yeah, so it's funny. MBAs people have a love-hate relationship with MBAs and venture capital. For some, it kind of it's just a credential that they gained a lot of pre-MBA finance experience, and so they needed it to sort of like step up their game or go to a different fund. For me, I had never taken a business or econ class prior to my MBA, so I like to think I got a lot more out of it than a lot of my classmates. That said, it kind of provides you with a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. It kind of turns you into, like, maybe a better analogy is sort of becoming an emergency room doctor. You learn, a little about a lot, but a lot about nothing. And so it's incumbent upon you to use those skills and to really, delve into, certain sectors and specialize, potentially in some of these things, and, really honestly get into the weeds, get dirty with these founders, jump into their financials. I certainly don't think it's a prerequisite by any means. But for some, I look at it as a stepping stone, but you certainly don't need one to succeed. And frankly, I'm pretty sure the best, if you look at the Midas list, you'll find less folks with less MBAs than you will than ones with.
Vic, thank you so much for your time. We're very excited about you coming to represent your company here, and we really hope that Luxembourg will provide you with some really interesting founders and startups and entrepreneurs to add to your books.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it, and I'll see you all next or in 8 weeks or so.